Hi, my name is Relly Manilbat and you're watching DrumBasics. Our episode for today is setting up your drum set. Today is actually a sunny day here in Manila in the Philippines. And our topic for today is very relevant for starting drummers and for those who would actually explore comfortability in their playing. And what we're talking about here is setting up your drum set. Okay, and most drummers, beginners and professionals would always find themselves figuring out how to set up their drum set. Okay, so let's begin by talking about a few experiences that I had here in Manila, and I'm sure most drummers here in Manila would be able to relate to that. So here in Manila, we've when you play on a venue, the equipment are provided. We've talked about that in the past episodes, and for us drummers to have that comfortable feel sitting down on that particular drum set or whatever is provided, you need to identify a certain a certain setup that would allow you to play comfortably. Okay, so what do we mean of that comfortable setup? We'll talk about setting up the drum set shortly. Let's first discuss what a normal setup is all about. Okay, a normal setup, this is something that you would actually encounter when you buy it straight from the store, music store, what they can provide, right? Back in the early 90s, when you purchase a drum set, they would actually give you a 5-piece drum set. And what do we mean when we talk about a 5-piece drum set? So it's the bass drum, a small tom, a medium tom, a floor tom, and a snare drum. Normally, the sizes of those would be back then in the 90s. You'd get for a fusion kit, it's a 10, a 12, a 14 floor tom, and a 14 snare drum. Okay, bass drum would always be 22. Some fusion kits would have a 20-inch bass drum to go with it, and some kits, well, the normal sizes would be a 12, a 13, a 16, a 14, and a 22. That's the normal sizes of the kits, which originated from the 80s up until early 90s. Okay, so when you go straight to a music store, normally it's a 5-piece. Now they offer a 4-piece, so it would and jazz kits are now available here nowadays. So when we talk about a 4-piece, it's just one floating tom, a floor tom, or maybe a hanging tom for a floor tom, okay, a snare drum and a bass drum, and then the sizes varies. So from an 8 hanging tom, 10, 12, 13, you could actually have those sizes, and there's those regular sizes as well, like 11. Okay. However, normally the standard size for the snare drum would still be the 14. Right? For jazz kits or starter kits, they offer 13 inches. Right? Floor toms would always come in 14s and 16s. Okay? Bass drum would vary now, right? For as big as the 24, 22, 20, the 18. And for jazz kits, they're offering the 16. In my case, I grew up in the middle of actually I'm learning the drums in the early 90s. So I had the experience of learning music of the 80s and adapting good things about the 80s music. Okay, and setting up your drum set in the 80s would require you to set it very low because the toms are really big, and with Filipino height, the normal height of a Filipino would range from 5'4" to probably a 5'8", okay, for male. And it's gonna be challenging if you play your toms on a height that is not comfortable based on your height. I mean, you need to make sure that when you play the drum set, you won't be lifting your arms anymore. Okay, so it was a struggle for me because I'm short, right? I'm nearly 5'5", and it's something that I've had trouble with, especially when you're a kid and you're playing a big drum set. It's hard. Okay, so what I suggest is technically the angle of the drums should be facing you. In that way, you'd be able to just slide through the drum set. Okay. The good thing about that is you won't be compromising your speed and your technique. Okay. Every time you lift your arm would compromise your technique. It's additional movement for your arm. So the lesser movement that you make with your arms would make you an efficient drummer. So the setup would really matter. Okay, so there are a lot of drummers setting up their kits flat like this. Okay, probably because of cosmetics or because they feel that back in the early 1930s, bebop swing, all of the drum sets are actually play like that, like the snare. Why? Because they use the bounce for each drum. Each drum functions like the snare. Okay, you can use that. It's your preference. Okay. The only consideration, if you do that, you make sure that when you set up your kit like that, you'll be able to play it comfortably. Right? Should you set up a 12 and a 13-inch like that, it's gonna be hard. Moving from tom to snare is going to be hard. So that's one idea that you can actually consider. Okay? So if you would notice, the second point that we're going to talk about is the spacing of the drums. The more closer the drums are, the more efficient that you could be. Okay, as long as you're comfortable moving around the kit. Okay, it's not restricting your movement. Okay, but the more compact you set up your drums, the more efficient that you would be to become a drummer. Like for instance, if you would notice the videos of the great Buddy Rich, okay? The kit is so compressed that he can actually move from one drum to another with flawless movement and very comfortable. The hands are flying, and you don't see any strain or any hindrance of moving from one kit to another. Well, technique is definitely one factor, but the setting up that compressed kit is a major contributor of how you can execute your technique well or better or comfortably. Okay, so consider that as the second point. You need to make sure that it's compressed and make sure that you're comfortable, that there's no restriction in your movement as a drummer, as a person against your kit. Okay. The third one, we may need to consider the height and adjust the height of the kit, the height of the drums, and adjust it to your personal height. So what I mean to say is, when I set up my drums, I make sure that it's not higher than my shoulder. Right? Shoulder down to your fingers. Right? These are the muscle groups that you are using to play the drums. Okay, so if it's going to be higher, there are some kits that are like for example Mangini's kit. Mike Mangini's from um, Dream Theater has drums all over around. Okay, one drummer is also Terry Bozzio also has kits that would actually range from, you know, right? They're setting up those drums because it's too much to set up on this level. So they need to get that extra space, which is up there. Okay. Now, um, if you are if you are actually going to have that setup, all right, if you're planning to have that setup, just make sure that you are aware that there will be actually challenging angles that you need to adjust to. Okay, like playing. Imagine when but you can actually do that. It's really up to you. But imagine you playing a double stroke on the wall. You're holding the stick. You're making sure that the stick don't fall up your hands, and you're doing the technique of the finger and the wrist on the wall. So if you have drums that are set up here, when you stand up, you need to reach them and do that technique, like playing double strokes on the wall. Okay, but if you're that kind of a drummer, if you want to play a big kit, on my end, this is a combination of a Dave Weckl inspired kit. Some of my influences are also, Steve Smith, um, Annika Neelis, uh, Benny Greb, of course, and Steve Gadd. Right? Those are the drummers that I listen to, right? And Vinny Kulayuda. So the kit almost looks like the kit of Dave Weckl back in the 90s, when he has two bass drums, one small one and one big one, and crashes all over. This usually is a dirty crash. Um, when Weckl plays it, it's like a sound effect symbol on the left side. So I'm using that as well. I have two crashes. Normally it's a splash that Dave Weckl plays here, and a 16-inch crash. In my case, I use a ride here because I like to ride on the right and on the left. And special effect symbols here, like Dave's, and the infamous piggyback that Dave Weckl has here. So basically, this is almost Dave Weckl, and the height is actually adjusting to my playing technique. I'm a match grip player, so if you would notice, everything is flat all around. However, the toms is actually facing me. So there are two toms here, the 8 and the 10, and I have a 10-inch snare drum here. Okay, so most of them are set up with a Shure microphone, except for this one and that one, bass drum. So this one, the bass drum and this particular snare is set up with a drum trigger, right? And we will discuss that very soon when we're going to mixing, when we talk about mixing. Um, but for now, this is a kit that I dreamt about. It's basically a hybrid kit, which has the TM2 set up against the traditional acoustic drums. This allows me to create a lot of sounds, and lets me enjoy um, you know, continuous practice, right? And that's one of the challenges when you grow up. There's a lot of you know things that you worry about. But with this particular drum kit, allows me to explore more, express my ideas, and prepare for the you know that gig that I'll be playing for. Right. Just let's go back to setting up the drum set. So, um, the um, let's do a recap. The first one, it would be the angle of the toms, and it should be facing you. And we're actually talking about that. 10, 8, 10, and this 10 here is facing me, angled towards me, so I can actually play it conveniently. I don't have to raise my arms. Okay. The second point is make sure that they are lower than your shoulder. The shoulder length would allow you to use the gravity, right? The force coming from, up and down, giving you that weight and space that you would need to hit the cymbal. The drum. Okay. The good thing about that is you don't have to apply force anymore. You let gravity take place and assist you with your playing the drums, with hitting the drums. Okay. Third is making sure that everything is compressed. You want to make sure that there won't be any hindrances in you playing from drum to drum, right? Regardless of what technique that you're using. Okay? You need to make sure that they're compact enough for you to have a comfortable movement towards against it when you do orchestration, when you hit the cymbals and stuff. Okay? The fourth would be the height of the snare and the height of the floor tom, the main floor tom, would always be at least 99% the same. So what I mean to say is not just the height, but the angle of the snare and the floor tom would be the same. The only reason why I'm doing that and why I'm suggesting that is because we want to make sure that we are ambidextrous with our hands. When we play unison notes from normally it's it's a pattern that most drummers would actually encounter. Okay? So play unison with the floor tom and the snare drum. You don't have to worry about your hands hitting at the same time. Since it's all the same, right? You just have to command, I need to hit these two drums at the same time because I need to use unison sound. So you hit it without carrying, okay? Because it's at the same height, same distance, okay? Same angle. When you hit them together, chances are you'll be creating a unison sound for both of them. Okay. If you have additional toms and snares, like this one and this one is at the same height of everything, right? Though the angle of this one and this one, right? This auxiliary tom. This is a 12-inch tom that I have here, and a 10-inch 5.5 steel snare here as an auxiliary snare. They're almost flat. They're not tilted. They're almost flat. They're almost the same angle, as this two here, the main snare and the main floor tom. Okay, but the good thing about this two here is you get that additional sound that you need. So the variation would help you be more creative in your music, your sound, and the movement that you'll be applying towards the kit adds up to your challenges, and it would actually be healthy to have those challenges, and you discover new things when you play. All right. So the last point that I want to share when you're setting up your drum set. Setting up the drum set. The last point would be the throne. You need to make sure that you have extra space at the back. right? So most venues here in the Philippines would just they give you a small space without you just, it's a restricting thing or feeling if you have a wall at the back and you can't move any longer, right? Well, for some reason, it would actually be beneficial because you can lean on it. However, um, if you want a comfortable play, okay, you need to make sure that you'll be able to move your drum throne away from the drum set. Again, drum set are compressed, the drums are compressed, but you need to also consider the movement of your body, right? So it's actually healthy if you have a space at the back. So here you would see I have tons of space at the back, but I can move my chair at the back if I want to, okay, here. But if you would notice this part here sounds like a U towards the throne. It looks like a crescent towards the throne. Why? Because when you move or you orchestrate, you move through a drum to drum, your body is actually doing a crescent movement, right? So if you could actually reach all of your cymbals, all of your drums with this movement, mind you, you'd be able to be an efficient drummer. And this is actually very traditional, right? That's the normal movement of drummers, okay? And it's part of setting up your seat, right? And the drums. So final recap of what we've talked about before we end the show. First, you need to make sure that your toms, the floating toms, or the one that's are mounted, should be facing you, right? And facing you so you could actually deliver most of your licks conveniently. Second one is the height of all your drums should be at least lower than your shoulder length, right? For you not to lift up your arm and hit them with tension, right? You can play comfortably, no lifting, just, playing with ease. Third one would be compression. You need to make sure that the drums are compressed for you to reach quickly, okay? And it won't be a restriction for you to move from drum to drum, okay? The fourth one would be the snare, the main snare and the main floor tom. It should be at the same height and the same angle. And that means to say that you don't have you can actually be careless. You can afford to be careless when hitting unison notes against these two, because it's less of your worries. They are the same height. Chances are your hands would actually hit together, hit at the same time. Okay, and then the last one, the fifth one, is the snare against the drum set. Snare should have the throne. What I mean to say, sorry, the throne. Throne should have space at the back for you to move, but not be restricted. And against it will be a drum set that is set up in crescent form. Right? Crescent form with a dot here. Crescent form, why? Because we want to make sure that we can actually move and reach all the drums without us moving our seat. So you're properly mounted, the seats are there, the throne is not moving, you're just moving your waist from side to side. You can actually play. Okay? So that's it for this episode. Okay? I hope you've picked up a few things from this episode, and we'll see you next time with other episodes of Drum Basics. Thank you very much for watching.